So, finally, after months of political wrangling and some say procrastination, President Buhari has sworn in his new cabinet of 43 ministers and assigned portfolios to them. The president has left the choice post of Minister of Petroleum for himself, with a new Minister of State and former Governor of Bayelsa State, Temipre Silva, appointed to manage the portfolio on a day-to-day basis in Africa's top producer of crude oil. Mr. Silva replaces Okey Ikechukwu, who was left out of the cabinet this time round. The other key ministry for the economy, finance, has been retained by Zainab Ahmed, and Jeffrey Onyama holds on to his post as foreign minister. In all, 14 ministers from Mr. Buhari's first term have been reappointed, most to their old jobs, in what some analysts have called the return of yesterday's men and women for today's jobs. Here's President Buhari assigning portfolios to the ministers earlier today.
The ministers are therefore allocated portfolios as follows. Number 1, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu Oga, Minister of State Mines and Steel Development. Muhammadu Bello, Minister of Federal Capital Territory. Senator Goodwill Afegbua, Minister of Niger Delta. Dr. Chris Ngege, Minister of Labor and Employment. Sharon Okezo, Minister of State Environment. Malam Adamu, Minister of Education. Ambassador Miriam Y. Katagum, Minister of State Industry, Trade and Investment. Temipre Silva, Minister of State Petroleum under Mr. President. Senator George Okume, Minister of Social Duties and International Affairs. Mustapha Baba Shahuri, Minister of State Agriculture and Rural Development. Gode Jide Agba, Minister of State Power. Festus Kiamo San, Minister of State Niger Delta. Dr. Omonia Onu, Minister of Science and Technology. Dr. Osagi Iha Nere, Minister of Health. Clement Aike Anade Agba, Minister of State Budget and National Planning. Otumba Richard Adenei Adebayo, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Geoffrey Onyema, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Dr. Ali Isa Ibrahim Pantami, Minister of Communication. Emeka Iwajuba, Minister of State Education. Engineer Suleiman H. Adam, Minister of Water Resources. Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, Minister of Finance. Dr. Mohammed Mahmoud, Minister of Environment. Sabo Nanono, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Major General retired Bashir Salihi Magashi, Minister of Defense. Then Minister of Petroleum. Next, Senator Hadi Sirika, Minister of Aviation. Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Ramatu Tijani, Minister of State Federal Capital Territory. Lai Mohammed, Minister of Information and Culture. Bimisola Saraki, Minister of State Transportation. Babatunde Raji Pashola, Minister of Works and Housing. Senator Adeleke O. Mamora, Minister of State Health. Mohammed H. Abdullahi, Minister of State Science and Technology. Ambassador Zubairu Dada, Minister of State Foreign Affairs. Architect Olani Lekan, a Deputy, Minister of Mines and Steel Development. Senator Tayo D. Alaso Dura, Minister of State Labor and Employment. Ruth Aruba Shola, Minister of Interior. Sunday Dare, Minister of Youth and Sports. Pauline Talon, Minister of Women Affairs. Aratami Amechi, Minister of Transportation. Muhammadu Megari Dingadi, Minister of Police Affairs. Engineer Saleh Mama, Minister of Power. Abubakar D. Aliyu, Minister of State Works and Housing. Saadia Umar Farooq, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. On this note, I wish to formally inaugurate the new members of the Federal Executive Council. Thank you and God bless the Federal.
President Buhari there. Well, for more on Nigeria's new cabinet, I'm joined now in the studio by our top-notch panel of analysts, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, who is a public communications expert and executive director, Development Specs Academy, Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi, who is a member of the Buhari Media Organization, and Prince Kassim Afegbua, who is a senior member of the opposition People's Democratic Party and member of its Presidential Campaign Council. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming in, and I'll start with you, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu. 6 months virtually after his second term, after he actually won the elections, President Buhari has now inaugurated his cabinet, better than the first time, but still appallingly, worryingly slow. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I will agree with the assessment. It was too slow in coming. There was some disappointment in the list in terms of those who made the list, not entirely as vibrant and exciting and 21st century as a lot of people expected. But at the end of the day, 3 facts stand out. Number one, he's finally inaugurated a cabinet. So we'll see what's going to come with it. You can't do anything about that. It's a sitting government. The concerns, of course, I'm sure will develop in the course of the conversation. But the major thing is that he's inaugurated a cabinet. Let us hope each of the ministers is given a performance template. I believe that if we really want results, anybody on that ministerial list should, at the end of every week, write down what he or she has done for his own self-assessment, for the purposes of measurable outcomes, etc. He cannot afford, having blown, like you said, nearly 6 months, a sitting government, having blown that length of time, and also against the background that, in fact, that nothing has been happening in this country since September last year. People were preparing for elections. The end of the year blew the elections. Early part of the year, nothing happened. Government wasn't in. So we've practically lost 1 year on all fronts. We can't afford the sort of thing we are used to now.
Right.
All the ministers should not now come and start doing the usual national summit on one thing or the other. This is a government. We need results.
Yeah, they need to move. And let me bring Prince Kassim Afegbua there. From the point of view of the opposition, have there been any surprises here? What's your reaction to this cabinet?
Well,
the portfolios assigned to them, because we knew who the people were going to take over.
Well, thank you, Charles. We are seeing the takeoff of the second leg of President Muhammadu Buhari. When you say surprise, it would mean that I was expecting something different. I think President Buhari just did what we all knew he was going to do, because how do I mean? There are no elements of surprise in his conduct, because it's been a government that has been rotating on the same axis. You know, that prides itself as anti-corruption government. It says a man of integrity. And I've had cause to, interrogate the presence and personalities, some of them, that make up the ministerial, appointments, But of course, just like Dr. Okey said, we have put all of that garbage and all of that in a basket. So it is time for us to begin to x-ray them and see how much of impact they're going to bring to the table.
Well, that's really the point, isn't it? Because however you look at it, they are the ministers now. And what I was hoping is to get your, as you put it, x-ray of the people and the portfolios given to them.
You see, I quarrel with, some of the persons by virtue of the antecedents and both in terms of their anti-corruption, posturing, in terms of allegations against some persons and all of that. I quarrel with the fact that they passed through Buhari's so-called anti-corruption tests, integrity tests, and they are put on the table to manage our collective patrimony. That's my worry. And you see, for a country, 21st century country, for a country that actually wants to move at the pace that it requires to catch up with other countries, I'm expecting that when the president says he's a man of integrity, if he says he's a man of anti-corruption, it has to be shown in his conduct, both in his appointments of persons and the persons who have so passed that anti-corruption text to manage a particular portfolio. And when I say this, I'm looking at certain persons. I wouldn't want to mention names. I don't know whether your third policy permits that.
No, you can mention names as long as you don't make sort of unsubstantiated allegations.
For example, when you have persons who are alleged to be standing trial with EFCC, Godswill Akpabio, Uche Oga, Timi Presiv, and all of those persons, and you are handing over very sensitive ministries to them, portfolios to them, petroleum, to a man who's 48 houses.
Well, we're almost out of time for this first quarter. Let's bring in Dr. Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi there, who's from the Buhari media organization, to respond to some of that. Timi Silva, for instance, now Minister of State for Petroleum. He's from the Niger Delta, a former governor of Bayelsa State. Does he have the technical, never mind whether or not he's tainted by any allegations of corruption, does he have the technical know-how to run such a ministry?
Well, you see, when you say never mind, we can actually, an allegation has been leveled.
No, I understand that. I was going to get to it.
We'll answer that, and I will talk about the technical competence. I think the EFCC has come out and said they have no pending case on Timi Silva. That's it. The case was thrown out by the courts, and Nigerians knew that. Most people know that. It's very easy to find out, to investigate this and find out the truth, Yes, there was he held office, just like it's almost normal with people that have held office before for the anti-graft agencies to actually investigate them after they left office.
Right. Okay. I'm going to ask you just to hold on. I'm going to ask you. We'll come straight back to you, but we must take a break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our critical examination of the new cabinet inaugurated in Abuja by President Buhari. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, as you may already know, President Buhari has sworn members of his cabinet into office today in Abuja, assigning portfolios to the 43 new and returning ministers. It's a cabinet that has its work cut out. It faces a long list of challenges, including very sluggish economic growth following the emergence of the country from recession in 2017, along with high unemployment, with around 50% of the country's youth jobless, and widespread insecurity, not just in the northeast where an insurgency is raging, but across the country. The inauguration comes 6 months after President Buhari won a disputed presidential election and nearly 3 months after his second term began. Here's some more from that swearing-in ceremony earlier today.
However, our nation continues to face tough challenges, and we are determined to build on the progress of the past 4 years in order to fundamentally shift Nigeria's trajectory and improve the well-being of our people. Today, I am pleased to inaugurate 43 new ministers who will work with me and the Vice President in our service to the people of Nigeria. You are chosen from each of the 636 states of the Federation, and most importantly, you share my commitment to working tirelessly for the people of this country and to achieving a future where every Nigerian can reach his or her full potential.
President Buhari were with me in the studio dissecting that new cabinet. Our panel of analysts, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, a public communications expert and executive director, Development Specs Academy, Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi, who's a member of the Buhari Media Organization, and Prince Kassim Afegbua, a senior member of the opposition People's Democratic Party and member of its Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you for staying with us. And Barrister Aliyu, you were talking before we went on a break. The issue was the alleged outstanding corruption cases against some members of that cabinet.
Yeah, like I was saying, we're actually talking about Temipres Silva, the Minister for the State for Petroleum in particular. Like I said, it was not uncommon for people that held offices, political offices such as governors, that after they left offices for the anti-graft agencies to actually investigate them. But you see, in this country, there is presumption of innocence until you are proven guilty. And this is a man that the entire case actually was collapsed, in the face of lack of evidence, And I trust this president. Had it been is the other way around, if this man was found, you remember in 2015, let me give you an example.
Briefly.
Thank you. In 2015, Temipres Silva was one of the principal officers of our campaign. In fact, he was the chairman of the inauguration committee on our side, that worked with the PDP for the inauguration. And that was at the same time that his case was before the court by the FCC. And I suspect that would have been one of the very reasons or grounds that he didn't make the ministerial list at that time. But when eventually the case, he was cleared, you see now in the second time, he is making the list.
That's a good point that Barrister Aliyu is making. And I would like to bring you in because you are considered the objective voice here. Of course, we know what Prince Kassim Afegbua was likely going to say. So what is your take?
And also what Barrister was likely.
Absolutely, what Barrister Aliyu has.
Let's put it in context. At the time Temipres Silva was having his problems, he was also from the same state with the incumbent president, and he was opposed to him. So it is also a fact of record and history that some people felt he was actually being witch hunted at the time. So to be fair, objectively speaking, okay, you're from the same state, you think you can take on the president, let's see what we can do with state power. So let's not discountenance the fact that that suspicion of unfair persecution was also in the air. Whether it's true or not is another matter, but we must put things in context. Then, within the state, actually some people considered him foolish, taking on the president to bring in a new government. He was in the forefront of that opposition, very vocal and bold about it. Some felt recklessly. And so, it is within the context of that I will then look at it that some felt, oh no, they're just drumming it up. Now, also in point of law, if a case is against you and the court says, we no longer have a case against you, any evidence to the contrary should be taken to the court again. So within the context of the concept of rule of law, abused or not, we cannot push beyond the matter which on the face of it, the facts are on the table for us. You may contest the fact. You may say, no, I don't believe it. But the truth is that some institutions of state have taken a position on this matter.
Right, and is that the case also for the other people who have been mentioned, like Rotimi Amechi and Babio and so on?
No. It's not unlike the one we're talking about. Timi's case is, if you like, conclusively addressed. The others are, in my view, totally scandalous. And I'm not sure, even assuming I'm one of those under that kind of pressure, I don't think I want to subject my boss or the president to the inconvenience of having to always give reasons why I'm on the cabinet. Must they die in office? Akpabio, can't he find some other relevance within the polity? It is not it.
Yeah, but in the context of the corruption allegations, you're saying that he's still got dirt on him.
No, I wouldn't know.
Is that what you're saying? Right, okay.
I am not an investigator. What the public perception is that he has unfinished business.
Okay, well, let's bring Prince Kassim Afegbua in from the point of view of the opposition, and of course from his point of view as someone who is very knowledgeable about what goes on in Nigerian politics and has watched it avidly over the years. I mean, this is a cabinet with people who are alleged to be corrupt, and a president who says his cardinal focus is fighting corruption. How do you reconcile the two?
Well, thank you, Charles. Just to say that in anti-corruption crusade and fight, perception is very, very key. When people perceive that you are treating certain persons with deodorants, apology to Senator Shehu Sani, and some others with insecticides, then you are going to affect the psychology of the fight against corruption. And what anti-corruption studies will tell you is for you to ensure that you get your perception index right, so that when you are dealing with persons, the issue of witch hunt, selective amnesia, favoritism, and all of that will not come to play to rub off on the genuinity or otherwise of what you are trying to do. So to that extent, some of these persons, for want of any evidence or whatever you call it, conclusively in court and all of that, they shouldn't have made a cabinet piloted by a man whose adherents say is a man of integrity, whose adherents say is out to fight corruption, is out to fight security and all of that. So for me, whether the cases are conclusive or otherwise, the fact that they have been guests of the anti-corruption agencies is enough reason why you should take them off, so that that issue of perception does not come in to rub off on your good intentions to fight corruption.
I have to agree that that's a very important point. In any modern country, modern economy, that would simply not happen. I mean, there's no way that somebody who's gone through all of that would even come anywhere close. But we've got to move on because there are a lot of things to get to. Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi, it's your party, it's you're part of the Buhari Media Organization. You've appointed people. We want you to justify those appointments. Saleh Maman, for example, takes power, a crucial ministry. What qualifications does he have to handle such a ministry? We've got Ralph Arebosola, who, for instance, getting Minister of Interior, which controls a lot of internal security, internal affairs, prisons, all that sort of thing. Does he have the skills to handle such ministries?
Well, for me, this is the way I look at it. There are some ministries that requires thoroughbred professionals, people that are skilled in that particular area to take over that kind of ministry. There are those ones. For example, you cannot be Attorney General or Minister of Justice without being a lawyer. You cannot be in the Ministry of Health, at least without having some form of kind of health background. So given that, but then also there are some other ministries that you don't really need. You don't have to be a scientist, for example, or an engineer. It is better if you have, for example, an engineer who studies electricity.
Well, given the problems that Nigeria has gone through with electricity, wouldn't it be a good idea to have somebody who actually knows about it?
It's better to have it, but that doesn't also stop someone, for example, who has the general prerequisite knowledge to drive an administration. Because so at the end of the day, you are implementing an agenda, which you have technocrats who are actually drawing up these policies and the implementations, and you are supervising it. But it's better to have a thoroughbred. And Saleh Maman that you mentioned, for example, in power, is an engineer. I think that is a square peg in a square hole. If you look at a lot of these ministers this second time around, he tries to do that. Even the Timothy Silva that you remember you asked me about his competence earlier. He had worked in the Ministry of the Petroleum before. He was a technical and a special advisor and assistant to a former Minister of Petroleum. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah, because he had worked closely with such people. He had garnered, an experience, at that kind of level. There are some
and to be fair, he's supposed to be running the day-to-day activities, essentially assisting the president, who is in charge of oil.
Exactly. So
and Kassim thinks that's jolly funny.
I brought up this.
And I'm afraid I have to find out why he's laughing.
No problem.
So tell me why. Now, let me just ask him and then I'll come to you in a minute. Okay, well, that answers the question. Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, your take.
Yeah, my take is quite simple. The absence of a technical, certified technical competence does not disqualify anybody from holding public office. I was say to the Minister of Transport, Ojo Maduekwe, was a lawyer. One of the best ministers of transport anybody would have on the planet. Gave us a national transport master plan, gave us the intermodal, the very thing. I went to Israel with him and all of that. So, in principle, I didn't hear your question. No, actually, the bicycle matter, because the logic of it was simple. What Ojo wanted was respect every road user. So, since you keep zebra crossing for people who are crossing the road, create bicycle lanes where you have in modern cities. Yeah. But it was badly communicated, if you like.
Okay.
So now,
I'm going to have to ask, I'm really sorry about this, but we'll come back to you when we return. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis of the new cabinet inaugurated in Abuja by President Buhari. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, as you know, President Buhari has today been inaugurating his new cabinet and assigning portfolios to the ministers. Both Nigerians and foreign investors have been waiting for this day since March, hoping to get clear policy direction that might help to stave off another recession. The hope is that the new team will come up with a new economic policy that will help to drive growth in the Nigerian economy. There is, of course, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which is the basis of President Buhari's economic initiative. And it says that Nigeria is supposed to grow at 5% this year, something that clearly isn't going to happen. Here's President Buhari speaking earlier today about his economic focus.
The outcome of the election was a clear testimony of the strong confidence of our people in this administration, and we must not let them down. Over the past 4 years, we have made enormous progress in tackling difficult challenges faced by the country. We have exited the country from recession, restored economic growth, curbed inflation, and shored up our external reserves. As a result, we have witnessed 8 quarters of consistent growth over the past 2.5 years, providing more opportunities to more Nigerians.
President Buhari, and with me in the studio, our panel of analysts, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, a public communications expert and Executive Director, Development Specs Academy, Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi, who's a member of the Buhari Media Organization, and Prince Kassim Afegbua, a senior member of the opposition People's Democratic Party and member of its Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you for staying with us. A sentence on the last topic. You were talking about the technical sort of know-how before we talk about the economy.
The question of technical know-how, it doesn't follow that you must study engineering to do certain things. That's one. 2, he could have gotten some younger people involved. 3, in the case of Timi Silva, which was raised specifically, he has background. He was been a technical assistant in the place. He's worked with a former minister. I think, was I say to Dakoro and all of that. So the point to make is not is capacity and generational issues. We're not seeing enough of generational sensitivity.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next thing, and I'd like you to address that, which is the economy. And the prognosis from the likes of the IMF and many economists doesn't look good. The Economist magazine, HSBC, the IMF, so many others have said that the country faces the risk of another recession. That's Nigeria, because there simply doesn't appear to be a coherent fiscal policy, according to critics. Certainly there hasn't been any policy for the last 6 months. And do you expect that this will change with the inauguration of a new cabinet?
No, nothing will change. As a matter of fact, they say we're about to enter another recession. I don't know where their facts are from. My take is that we haven't gotten out of any recession. So we're still on the first journey. All the indices are not looking good because the whole logic of an economy is impact on the welfare of the people. Are Nigerians the better for it? Are the cost of food items moving up? Replacement cost for businessmen, is it going up or down? Are more businesses shutting down? The answer is yes. And so, and then you must also, this is enough time now to look at the economic recovery and the growth plan, which came into being more than 12 months ago.
Yes, 2017.
Precisely. What has it delivered? With all due respect to those who are excited about it, it has delivered nothing. And looking at even the projection for the year, I think the document, I may be mistaken, but it looked like something that was largely speculative. Because even at the time it was being conceived, I remember we had a roundtable where it was analyzed. The question that kept coming up from people like me was, on what basis are these projections being made? And then when in addition to those projections, the fact that practically none of them is looking good, the welfare of the people, and then somebody comes to tell you, you know, if you look at the inflation figures, we are now talking about single-digit inflation, the medium expenditure plan is looking like this. This is a nation, not a class of postgraduate students in economics. And so when you settle for those instruments of analysis rather than the facts on the ground, dishonesty becomes an essential ingredient for public administration. And I think there's too much of it going into the understanding of the economy as we speak. With the inauguration of the ministers, what magic are they going to do? First of all, there's going to be greater expense in government. So in terms of the steps
Because
that
of course
we need,
it's expanded the cabinet.
yes, it has.
Right.
So in terms of the steps that will need to be taken for things to happen, even if all the money for the respective capital projects are given to the ministers, the year is already at an end. So the prognosis is correct in anticipating greater economic misfortunes. That's my take.
Well, let me bring Prince Kassim Afegbua in. The Economic Recovery and Growth Plan projects 5% growth this year, 7% next year. As Dr. Ikechukwu said, he doesn't know where that is coming from. But is it your sense that the economy, even if it's not growing at 5%, is heading in the right direction of supporting itself, and that things like diversification, some sort of diversification, is taking place?
Well, Charles, you gave a very good introduction when we were launching this program, and you said tepid economic growth. We are in dire straits, no doubt about that. What this government should do is first and foremost to recover our country from insecurity, recover it from armed banditry, kidnappings, killings, and Boko Haram. You can only talk about your economic policy, economic growth, when the indices are right and the conducive environment to drive businesses is there. But what we have is a contestation of all the negatives, whether you like it or not. All the indices are, like you said, they're in the negative. Even the agricultural, whatever you're talking, just nosedive. So downwards. So this government must do us good, you know, by ensuring that they are able to recover the country. Let us first of all own the country. By the time you look at the agitations across the country, cross-country agitations, you are talking about IPOB here, you are talking about revolution now here, you're talking about armed banditry, kidnappings, and all of that. And all the geopolitical discussions and conversations going on. This country and the president must sit down and, you know, ingrain interactions and interrogations of the dominant issue so that we can have a country first, because before you start setting newspaper paper projections, 5%, 7%, and all of that. When people are not even, when farmers can't even go to farm again because of fear of harassment attack, when people can't travel to drive businesses because of fear of kidnapping, when the roads are in terrible shape, your infrastructure is decayed, and yet you are talking about 5% growth rate. No. So this country, as it is now, is just fluid. Anything can happen.
Right.
It's fragile, and that fragility cannot promote and encourage and enhance any economic growth.
Okay, let me bring in Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi there. If you want to respond to the economy first, because we will talk about insecurity.
I pray you give me equal time, especially.
Yeah, no, obviously we're going to we're very objective.
Yes.
We give you equal time, but
thank you.
There've been allegations and suggestions that the economy of Nigeria is at the moment being supported by foreign loans. The debt profile is growing every single day. What is your take on that? What is the plan for the economy? Because the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is clearly unrealistic.
Well, this is what I think. You see, a plan is what it is. It doesn't have to be something that that you achieve. Normally, you will, when you want to plan for yourself, even as an individual, you set targets that may not, you may not achieve it, you may get close to it, but you don't set targets below what you want to aim. You actually set it higher so that it makes you to perform much higher in order to get to those targets. Normally, usually, you don't actually get to them within that time. The ERGP is for 3 years, 2017 to 2020. Is it?
We're a few months away from
exactly. Is it a totally bad document? I don't believe so. Has it achieved all what it has said to achieve? Definitely no. Is it the fault of this administration? Well, perhaps some. Largely, you see, an economy, as a country, you don't exist in isolation. Even this recession that people are drumming about it's a global one. It's not only Nigeria. US is also not actually excluded from the recession that is coming. But let me
come in there. That is precisely the problem, that the international headwinds, economic headwinds, are blowing very dusty across the world. You've got problems with the United States and China. You've got the German economy contracting. You've got the British economy contracting.
Exactly.
And the point is, how prepared, what are we seeing from the Nigerian government that tells us that you're prepared to deal with
90% of the countries in this world, Charles, will be affected if the indices we're seeing economically, in the global economy, if they continue, they must affect 90% of the countries in this world. It all depends on the kind of shock absorbers you have.
Well, that's the point. What are your shock absorbers?
Exactly. Now, the shock absorbers that we have in this country is, number one, is the diversification policy that we have started. The move to agriculture, I heard Prince Kassim said, that one is also not really nothing to write home about. I have to remind Prince Kassim that in this country, because of the attempts by this administration to diversify into agriculture, we are saving $5 million a day, every day. And I dare you to actually check with the NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics. You find that this figure is a correct figure. If we are saving $5 million a day because of the devastation component of the ERGP, is that not something? Are we not seeing a lot of people?
Well, if it is being saved, that is something.
Now,
but we can't let you talk for the entire time.
We have a lot of commodities, cocoa, cotton, that people are really moving in. That is a great shock absorber.
Okay, I understand that. So your argument is that there's some measure of diversification taking place. We've got 30 seconds before we go on a break.
The railway that we're building.
30 seconds. The shock absorbers don't exist. Insecurity, unhealthy population, undeveloped human capital, an elite that's focused on consumption. These are and the institutions of state that are weak. And the diversification policy that records, as he said, some gains in an environment where the diversification is not translating into anything that one can see, the shock absorbers are all crippled.
Okay. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis of the state of the Nigerian nation on the day that the new cabinet has been inaugurated in Abuja. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Enyegolo. You should see the discussions going on behind the scenes here when we're off camera. Nevertheless, several international organizations, including the IMF, have raised concerns about the state of the Nigerian economy and other issues like growing insecurity, even as they've expressed general optimism that President Buhari has finally inaugurated his new cabinet. They cite the global market and the trade war between the US and China, with both economies curving towards contraction and the same trend occurring in Britain and Germany. Meanwhile, as these strong headwinds continue to buffet the global economy, Nigeria is just today waking up and starting the process of putting in its policy to guard against the effects of such headwinds. And it's still not clear what the stimulus policy is that will help the country stave off imminent recession and grow at the unrealistic target of 5% this year and 7% next year. Well, with me in the studio, our panel of analysts, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, a public communications expert and executive director, Development Specs Academy, Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi, a member of the Buhari Media Organization, and Prince Kassim Afegbua, a senior member of the opposition People's Democratic Party and member of its presidential campaign council. Thank you for staying with us. And to you, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, you were making an economic point the last time about taking off from what he said earlier, which was essentially that there are no buffers for the Nigerian economy.
No. There are none, and then because let's also note that when we say the ERGP is a wishy-washy document, it applies in large measures to the kind of document Atiku came back with from Dubai after he got the PDP ticket. So the tendency to speculate and give the public the impression that's going on is not new, is what dominates our thinking.
So it doesn't matter which part?
No, it doesn't matter. Right. It's the same leadership indolence. He was saying initially that Kassim was involved in drafting it off camera. I told him that, and Kassim quickly said no. If Kassim was involved, I would chase him out of here. I know the kind of thing he will do. Not that kind of document. So on the state of the economy, you measure the welfare of the people. Our hospitals, do they have drugs? Our children, are they in school? Human capital is what defines a nation, makes it different from another from the standpoint of development, not resources. And so, for how long has ASU been on strike? I hear they're about to proceed
ASU
again.
is the
academic staff of universities,
right?
Across all
lecturers at
across all the
universities.
distance. And then the matter of security. The other point to note in all of this is that in all these indices or expenditure headings for good governance, billions have been spent in the last 4 years. The outcome we are getting, is it commensurate? The answer is no. And so, whereas it's easy to react reflexively, defense, oh no, we are doing well, the truth of the matter is that the government ought to be embarrassed. And in saying that, you're not exonerating the governments before it, because the foundations were consistently weak. And if you look at the policies that are coming into place, you ask yourself also, what is the disposition of those who are going to now become ministers? How are their friends going to react? How are the communities? It's our turn to chop. So you find that whereas government communicators and people in office will take the trouble to talk about the sort of thing our friend Barrister has been talking about, the truth of the matter is that fertilizer in principle is cheaper, but the middlemen are the ones making the killings. If all these things have happened, where is the food? Why is the price going up? The dams are in place, and so you have less water downstream. So agriculture at the rural levels, it's all disappeared. And yet, the few of us who are outside the rural areas celebrate Nigeria's progress, which doesn't match the needs of the country, which is a joke when compared with the rest of the world, which is totally insensitive and, if you like, blind to where the world is. I remember Ekweremadu before he left, sometime was saying that, the right thing is not to allow people bring in cars that don't run on fuel into Nigeria. Instead, that's a leader. You should be thinking of how to belong to the 21st century,
Absolutely.
not how to recede to the 12th century and shut everybody else off.
I'm going to bring Prince Kassim Afegbua in, because partly what Dr. Okey Ikechukwu is talking about is also the image of Nigeria, the way that it is perceived in the rest of the world. You talked about perception being everything. What about the image of Nigeria today? Has it improved? Because the impression we had in 2015 was that the rest of the international community were so disgusted with the PDP government, and the perception around the world was of a government that was spectacularly corrupt, and they wanted a change, and they supported a change, and that's how Buhari obviously came into power. Has the image of Nigeria changed for the better internationally since then?
Let me quickly state that even though I wasn't part of those who scribbled Atiku's documents, that I took time to study it, you can't discard it as a piece of rubbish.
No, you didn't say it was a piece of rubbish.
No. I just want to.
You said it was something that is unrealistic in many ways,
you see,
like the ERPG.
Yeah, but what you do is to set agenda. And that policy document, if you take time to study it, you see that there's a clear departure from what obtains in the EROGP. In terms of quick wins and medium-term plans. So for me, that was the first time I was in a presidential candidate that has a document to show. The APC had a manifesto with 21 items which is never implemented as we speak up till date. Only one item is waiting card with, which is the school feeding program. Having said that, our image is under detention. It's been detained by this government continuous referral to the past. Oh, PDP did this, people did this. Right. By the time you remind them of the fact that they are also recruiting and taking personnel of PDP and chieftains of PDP into the APC, then you see them beating the retreat. But what we are saying in terms of the image of the country is I can't say specifically what our foreign policy is. In the last 4 years, I can't say specifically this is what our foreign policy, because our nationals have been killed everywhere, either into drugs, into xenophobia, what have you. What has been the position of government in ensuring that there's a good representation, or interaction, bilateral discussions, with other countries where we have crisis. It's been.
Well, I'm not sure that's directly related to foreign policy.
No,
I mean, it is the way government reacts to things that are happening. That's a different issue from what the foreign policy objectives of a country.
I know the foreign policy objective. I'm just telling you that some of these things that are happening, they're also giving us bad image. You're talking about image. People, they are killing Nigerians because of drugs. Oh, that's a bad image, whether you like it or not, because of the global, response to issues of drug. But even back home, the issue of anti-corruption, which is the main plank of the APC-led federal government, how much of level playing field have they applied in handling cases of corruption? How much of it? It's either you hear people say it's witch hunt, or selective amnesia, or favoritism, or nepotism, and what have you. So for me, the APC government is just running in circles. Running in circles in the sense that they seem not to have platforms where they can meet, interact, interrogate, take decisions, so that in the final analysis, whatever comes out of that can have impact on the well-being of the people. Because just like he said, what bothers Nigeria is how much of impact your policies are.
Right. No, that is absolutely correct. We've got a couple minutes left, and we must give Barrister Aliyu the chance to respond, because one of the things that was said when Buhari took over in 2015 was this slogan of change. We kept hearing it being bandied around, and even before the change actually took place, we started hearing about the next level. I mean, you think that the government failed to communicate to the people that change, just saying the word change, is not a program, but the promise of a program. And that after you've captured the people's imagination with your change mantra, you then have to translate change into a series of programs that people can identify with. And the point he's making is that we haven't seen those programs.
Yeah. Thank you. First, let me just quickly respond to those things he actually mentioned. For example, on a foreign policy level, I mean, it's clear. I'm surprised he said he didn't know what is our foreign policy. It's there. It's first to West Africa, first our national interest, West Africa, to the African Union, and then global. Exactly, but you say you didn't know about it.
No, it's
and
we have
I'm coming, please. You see, I didn't interrupt you when you were talking. We have demonstrated that time and time again. You saw our role, what we played in the Gambia, for example, when it was about to...
and a very significant role.
Yes, and a couple other countries. The issue that he said that Nigerians are dying, drugs, people... If you commit a crime, if you go and reside in another man's country, you have to respect the laws of that country. If you break the laws of that country, it's not the government of Nigeria that you are now coming here to hold accountable. No, you have to be responsible for your actions anywhere you reside. That is simple. Yes, our reaction, and you see, there is office of this
I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but we're virtually out of time.
And the corruption, I wanted to talk something.
I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid we are out of time.
Two past immediate governors of APC are now facing investigation.
Barrister Aliyu Abdullahi, Prince Kassim Afegbua, and Dr. Okey Ikechukwu. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.